Hello and welcome to Crybaby Sentimental Homestead. I'm Aubrey, and today we're talking about prepping. And I really want to convey that prepping is for everyone. It is not for the fringe of society or for people who are paranoid. It is for everyone. We have normal day to day things that we need to prep for, and we have a culture and a society and a history of prepping. It wasn't always called prepping, it wasn't always called survivalism, and it was a part of people's daily lives. And as things have changed over time, we have been forgetting the skills that have been around forever. If we become too disengaged and disassociated from actual skills when we need them, we are going to really struggle and suffer. Hopefully, it will just be discomfort and, something that's uncomfortable and not something really serious. But if something was to seriously happen, even on a small scale, even on an individual scale, it's really important that we have skills for a variety of reasons. In this video, I'm going to talk to you, hopefully win you over. If you are not a prepper, I hope that I can win you over. Even if you will just comply out of love for your fellow humankind, out of just being a logical and rational person. So I'm going to explain to you the history and psychology of prepping, the reasons and rationale behind it, several different prepping models, which can really vary in style and mind frame, tips for beginners, which also would be helpful to anybody who is a long-term prepper. Those tips would still be beneficial. And I'm also going to include an invitation to comment and subscribe. I would like to do a shout out to the people whose images I have been able to use. I will show my references at the end. So I give credit to the photographers who took those pictures and the articles where I'm able to cite my sources. A lot of the information I already know like verbatim in the back of my brain. I just know it, and it's part of what I have done research over the years, and it's part of my repertoire. I have a lot of this information already in my brain and my experience. However, I think it's really important to not just say stuff without being backed up. So I do have references included as well. Oops, let me go backwards for a second. I got a little click happy right there for a second. So I do want to talk I thought it would be kind of funny. History and Psych 101. Okay, so I really want to say that while prepping has been coined in the last century, preparedness is as old as humankind. The History Cooperative claims that prepping stemmed out of hysteria following the Cold War. It is certainly true that fear is often met with a natural reaction to be ready for what may come. So even though the terminology of prepping, some say the early 1900s, but I guess they can't really track it down. But then definitely after the 1950s, that people have been getting ready and preparing for life, for a harsh winter, for a storm, for a period where they aren't able to catch any game, for a bad harvest. People have been preparing forever. So this is not something new, and it should not be something that goes by the wayside either. If you put your trust in society, in a supermarket, in a politician, you will be sorely disappointed. It's really important that you take responsibility for your own life and for the lives of your loved ones, that you have some authority over being prepared for what might come. If there was some kind of major disaster or a major military conflict on U.S. soil, the people who you would expect to come and help you may not be available, and you might need to just help yourself. So you need to know how to help yourself. In every Intro to Psychology 101 course, which of course I've taken, we learn that humans have a natural fight or flight response. It's not surprising that wars and international conflicts would result in social, emotional, and psychological responses. A lot of people are suffering from PTSD from the COVID shutdown. Being quarantined for so long, our young people um, are shocked. They have gone through trauma. Even those who did not really experience much, just not being able to see each other, just being told it's your fault someone got sick, is traumatic, it's traumatizing. So we often have like a fight or flight response. So during COVID, a lot of people became preppers, especially when they started to see the rush on toilet paper, which was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. Um, but, I'm kind of surprised that the other things, weren't more of a priority. But, a clean bottom is really important. um, but back to my point. Whenever there are wars, whenever there are conflicts or threats of conflicts, whenever there's a lot of negative images, a lot of negative events that are being shared with us in the news, um, people are more likely to start prepping. That is a natural, instinctive response that has kept our species alive. And it's important to realize a lot of people are doing this whole thing of, like, well, it's bringing out the hysteria. Well, that too, but it's also making people realize that our systems are more fragile than they have appeared. We believed we were invincible. I never imagined my entire life that we would be quarantined. I watched all kinds of sci-fi, shows about quarantines, and it never occurred to me that it would really happen, especially for something like COVID. I would expect it more for something like Ebola, or something like that. Um, but those kinds of stressful situations, which can be the riots, the watching the news of seeing people storming into um, places that you think are supposed to be safe, seeing totally wasteful violence of harming somebody because somebody assumed something about somebody's politics. It's just really heartbreaking. But that has often inspired people to become preppers. But we have a natural desire to make sure that we have enough food on our shelves, that we have enough water, that we have shelter, that we are warm, that we have comfort, that we have all of our basic needs. And so I really want to caution you, if people are saying things around you like prepping is, a sign of psychosis, or prepping is paranoia. They take a step back from those kinds of people for a moment and think for yourself, because just because you're paranoid doesn't mean someone's not watching you. Just kidding. That's something my mom used to say to me when I was little, where like we just joke around. Just because you're crazy doesn't mean, whatever. Um, so there are very real things that are happening in the world. There are natural things that are happening in the world. And it has been our natural reaction to stress to make sure that we have more food put up, that we have, a way of dealing with the issues to protect ourselves. And if you see those kinds of events and you see that kind of unrest and that kind of uncertainty, and you aren't prompted to put away a little food and prepare a little bit, my question is, who's crazy? Isn't it crazy Wouldn't it be crazy to be surrounded by chaos and conflict and stress and not do anything to protect yourself or your loved ones? Wouldn't that be crazy? And I'm using the word crazy in a very non-judgmental way. Okay, guys. I'm like, wouldn't it be kind of the wrong psychological reaction if someone was coming at you? Okay, let's say someone's coming at you, they're going to hurt you. You don't flinch, you don't move out of the way, you don't put something between you and them so that they don't hit you. If, don't you react? If you are standing there like a possum, staring in the headlights as something is coming towards you, and you do nothing about it, then that brainwashing, that psychological shaming of people has made you, I don't want to say an invalid, but it has made you so that you are not able to protect yourself and the people that you love. I really want you to reflect on how we have been shamed, and made to feel like something's our fault, or to be embarrassed of ourselves if we try to say that there's a problem. If you react and you say there's a problem, then people will shame you for being a reactionist, that you're embellishing, you're overreacting, you're too sensitive. Uh, it's really important that we take a step back from that kind of um, propaganda and start to realize we are human beings, we are animals, we are divine creatures made by the hands of God, and we have the right to survive. And if we see a foreseeable threat, that we need to do something to protect ourselves, whether that is making sure we have food security, that we have water, that we have appropriate clothing, appropriate shoes, that we are able to take care of our families, we're able to protect our children, that we're able to secure our homes and do all those things. So, Psychology 101, natural fight or flight response. We are being told not to react to anything. We're supposed to walk around like Stepford wives, happy and content with anything, with our tiny houses and our no possessions and no right to have a feeling or a say or an opinion or a disagreement on anything. The psychology that is being thrown at us is completely asinine. So I'm just going to go kind of backwards to the history and psychology of prepping. We've been prepping our entire existence, especially those people who are not living in tropical areas. Put it that way. So, continuing on with the history of psychology of prepping, some countries have a history of mainstreamed fallout shelters and bunkers, like Sweden. Sweden is the first one that comes to my mind, but Denmark and Switzerland also have extensive networks and bunkers. While the push for preparedness was at its peak in the 1950s, modern citizens of these countries are not ready for war or basic survival, and that's now. So, I actually have a citation there, and it will be shared at the end. Um, but in the past, in the 1950s, a lot of people were prepared. You can actually go on YouTube and look up Swedish bunkers, and there are tons of Swedish bunkers, because almost like every home that was built for decades after that had bunkers in them. Nowadays, we're all soft. We're soft, we're skillless. People who are growing up today are not growing up learning basic skills of survival, just like how to live without all of our basic amenities. So while many claim that preppers are fear mongers, I would argue that most preppers are following the instincts that have kept our species alive for millions of years. By defining fight or flight and discussing the history and psychology of prepping, many try to naysay the rationale behind prepping. Call it what you will, Prepping is fundamentally an approach to increase the probability of survival. Even the term survival puts concerns on the fringe list. Simply, prepping increases your odds at living to see another day. Don't you want to see another day? I'm not fear mongering. Whenever I do a little prep, and I am not a big time prepper, I I have a very small home. I don't have a lot of space, but I have the mentality of gaining skills and being a problem solver, thinking creatively to figure out how to get out of situations and how to deal with a problem. Um, Finding solutions that maybe are not run of the mill. And the idea that a person, because they buy a 74 hour emergency kit, oh, now, oh my gosh, that you got to watch out for them because they're super scary. They're like, they believe in all kinds of crazy stuff. It's crazy because for thousands of years, people have put up food. They've had food on their shelves. They're prepping and canning and making candles and making soap and making their own laundry detergents and washing their own clothes and hanging it outside to dry and making a campfire and cooking on the campfire. People have been doing this for thousands of years, if not millions. So for people to say that because some of us want to return to having actual skills, that we are somehow crazy or we are somehow dangerous is ridiculous. A person who can feed themselves is not dangerous. They are less dangerous than the person who's starving who would harm you to get your rice and beans. I'm going to say that again. The person who is not prepared is the one who is the danger to everybody else because they will be suffering, they will be desperate, and they will do whatever it takes to put something in their belly. And that might mean stealing it from somebody else with or without violence. So if you are a pacifist, if you are a peacemonger, then you should prep too. Because if you don't have to confront somebody and try to get their food, you will be able to continue to live in your peaceful way. So you should have what you need. And the word survival should not put anybody on edge of like, oh, this person's a survivalist. Oh, that's scary. Why is that scary? Because somebody is able to identify plants in the woods and is able to tell you what's edible or not edible. Someone who can start a fire and make a nice cozy campfire so that you're not, you know, getting frostbite. That is the opposite of dangerous. It is preventing the danger. So really important to be not fall into the game because it's starting to become a game. So here's the reasons and rationale. So if you've watched any of those survival documentaries, the reality shows, people have all kinds of ideas. And I know that there's some that I've left off here. I've already thought about some, like EMPs. I didn't put EMPs on my list. But why do people prep? People prep for a lot of different reasons, and we are inspired by fear. Being prepared is a response to mitigate the fear. And I guess you probably have to be careful that you're not becoming a hoarder, um, but um, or taking it to a point where like you're emptying your entire bank account and you can't pay your electricity bill or something. But it's important that we recognize that people have a lot of different reasons for prepping. And I actually kind of was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what reason I'm prepping for, but I just know that things are uncertain and there's a lot going on. And wouldn't it be nice if the power goes out, if I have a flashlight and candles, or if we have to evacuate our home for a fire or something, that we have some go bags that have changes of clothes and, our documents and things that we need, um, that we have a full tank of car. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you are driving on a half a tank, you need to fill up your gas tank and keep it full as much as you can. Never let your car go on empty or even half a tank, because if something were to really happen and you had to leave town and gas stations were closed. I remember when I was much younger, I think I was in my 20s, um, I wanted to go see my grandparents. And I stopped at a gas station, and all the gas stations that day were closed. I don't know what was going on, but for like a day, I couldn't find a gas station, and I barely got there on fumes. And so, imagine if there was just a day or two without access to a gas pump, and if you're trying to hit the road and get somewhere safe, you couldn't get there. You'd be walking. And for a lot of us who have physical issues, you might not be able to walk that far. So people prep for natural disasters, which should be regional. So like if you live in an area like Kansas or someplace that gets tornadoes, you're preparing for a tornado. If you're living, on the coast, on the Gulf Coast, you're preparing for hurricanes. If you live in Washington, you're preparing for maybe for earthquakes or power outages, windstorms. If you're living in Alaska, maybe you're prepping for being snowed in. I used to live in Alaska and we would get snowed in. So you have to try to mitigate the temperature. Other reasons could be power outages, natural, and terrorism. So there has been talk about domestic terrorism, where people have been purposely trying to cause power outages for whatever reason is unknown to me. But at the very least, power outages are annoying and inconvenient. Do you have a way to heat up food without a stove? Or do you have shelf stable food that you can prepare without opening up your refrigerator so that you don't let all the cold air out and have your food spoil? So, how do you deal with your power outages? Social unrest and riots. I have not seen them close to me, but I've seen them in our major cities. So in Seattle, there were a lot of riots, um, and social unrest, and that was actually really scary to see. And I'm just very blessed that I don't live in those neighborhoods. But that kind of stuff happening, what do you do if someone's banging on your door? Are you ready for that? Do you have a double bolt? Do you like I One of the things I did was I went and got um, a metal screen door, the kind that don't have the soft screen, but it's all the way metal. And now I can bolt it and I can double lock it. So I have basically two doors now. And it reminds me of when I lived in California. A lot of the houses have bars in the windows and they have the same kinds of door like I bought. Um, but are you ready for that? Or do you have boards? Can you board up your windows to keep people from climbing in? For job loss or loss of income. So for loss of income could be for many different reasons, and job loss is not the only one, but it's possible someone could lose their job. And I'll tell you, I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I did not agree with being required to get the COVID vaccine before it was even FDA approved. And my teacher union did not protect us. I'm going to keep it short on this. I don't want to cause a lot of issues. But a lot of teachers, and they really lied about how many people have lost their jobs, but a lot of teachers and other state workers refused to get the shot. And for whatever reason, either they didn't fill out the paperwork because they thought it was a constitutional right to not have to get the vaccination. Some people, were able to get waived for medical reasons or for religious reasons. But there are people who are religious who don't go to church. And there are people who have medical issues whose doctors don't agree. They're very liberal and they don't agree with them. So you have people like me. I have factor five leading, and they don't really know how COVID or the COVID vaccine affects an individual with factor five. COVID is supposedly increases my risk of getting a pulmonary embolism, but so does the vaccine. So when I went, I had to get vaccinated. I basically was looking at, I have to pay for my bills. I have to take care of my family. If I don't have a source of income, my children and I will be homeless. Well, my family will be homeless. And, you know, I looked at that and I thought it was really a really heartbreaking decision for me. And if you're one of those people who's like, here's COVID, the COVID vaccine, shove it down your throat, bye bye, go away. Um, I can totally accept other points of view if you are willing to accept other people's points of view too. Um, I don't believe that anybody should have a any kind of medical procedure forced on them. And I will even say I think it is a form of medical rape. And I felt like I was medically raped. And I wrote all over my forums, I disagree with this and I don't want to get this vaccine. And they still gave me both doses in September of 2021. I am traumatized by that experience. I actually feel like crying right now telling you about it, but I feel like I needed to say it. I made a decision to prevent losing my job because that was a certainty. If I did not get vaccinated, I would lose my job. I would lose my house. I would lose everything I worked my entire life for. My kids would be homeless, living with their grandparents. Like there's not space for them. It would not be comfortable. I would lose everything. And not only would I lose my job, I would not have the ability to get a different job in my same field because they made it so that even higher institutions like colleges, which I've worked as a college instructor before, and I couldn't work there either because they had the same rules. And I even looked at private schools, and in private schools is a huge pay cut, and they also private Christian schools who don't agree with the mandate were also required to have teachers vaccinated. I know that for a fact because I have people who are in those kinds of schools. Also, I thought, okay, well maybe I'll go into online teaching. And guess what? Even online teachers were required to get vaccinated. What? You are at home or in a building or in a room, in an office somewhere, teaching without being around other people, and they were still required. It does not make any sense. It was an agenda, and I don't know the reason behind it, but I was very, very upset about the whole thing. And it scared the crap out of me. Excuse my language. It scared the crap out of me because as I was going in to get this, I was thinking of things like, well, what happens if it was worse than this? And I still had to take whatever it was they're giving because I need to provide for my family. And I was like, there's no job I'm qualified to do. I mean, I this is what I know to do. I am a teacher. I'm an instructor. I I've always worked in a professional setting, and all of the professional settings, whether it was in a public, private, or online, all required the jab. And so I got it. And I had people who were like-minded really judging me harshly for it, saying that I took the mark of the beast, which is not true. It is not the mark of the beast. But it was a violation. It was a threat to my health. Um, and I couldn't risk losing my job. So basically, what I decided was my job or my life. If I lose my job, then we're homeless. If I lose my life, my kids get a life insurance policy. That's what I had to think about. So, if it happens again, I'm losing my job. I'm not doing it again, and I'll find some other way to make money. Um, it will be really sad because I have 3 college degrees to go to waste, but it is what it is. But basically, um, anybody who wants to do that can kind of piss off. Sorry, I'm sorry, but they need to check themselves. I am so at a loss. I'm at a loss about this because um, it's really, really not okay to force somebody else into your own ideology. And I went to the doctor the other day. like last week because I have COVID, and the nurse and the doctor were real jerks. Had absolutely no no manners whatsoever about their judgment of me for not agreeing and getting boosters. I said they asked me if I had gotten boosters, and I said no, and they said they basically shamed me for it, like repeatedly. Well, the nurse shamed me for it, and the doctor did too. And I was like, there is not enough research on factor V leading that the booster could give me an embolism. The booster could give me a pulmonary embolism. And what are they going to pay for my children to go to college? Are they going to pay my death? Like my funeral costs? Are they going to do something if they give me the booster and I die? Because no one's going to attribute the booster. They're going to say it was asthma, it was a factor V, it was a underlying health condition. Well, yeah, I have a underlying health condition, but you're okay to force me to get something that you don't know how it's going to affect somebody. So that's really sad. And by the way, if you did not know this, and the reason I'm talking about this is because this is one of the reasons why I'm prepping right now. With the job loss, if you are a state employee or a teacher and you didn't get it and you lost your job, you didn't qualify for unemployment because you were technically not fired. You chose to sever your employment for your own reason. And so a lot of people, they're saying, oh no, not many people lost their jobs for it, because they're not counting people. They're saying that they chose. They're not counting people. They're saying no one lost their jobs for it because nobody qualified for unemployment, because the government chose to not let us qualify. So I actually went to I tried making a video about this before. I went to a yard sale last summer. Very weird. I ended up at a lady's house who doesn't even live near my school. And um, she was from my district. And she was losing her home. And she had all this teacher stuff that was for sale. And I was actually buying some of it. And she said to me that she lost her job and where she lost it from. And she was in my district. And my district has said that nobody lost their jobs from it. And so it was a lie. I was watching this woman pack up her home and sell all of her teaching materials because she could not be an educator anymore. She had tons of very valuable stuff that she was selling for like 50 cents because she knew she couldn't teach anymore. And now I see that there are people getting jobs without getting vaccinated. So was this just some kind of social experiment where people lost their jobs and their income? So now I am prepping for job loss, because if this happens again, I'm losing my job. I am not going to go and get the vaccination again. I don't trust them. I was forced to go into it before it was even FDA approved. I think the day before it was FDA approved that I actually got my vaccination. But the mandate came before it was FDA approved. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. Economic shutdown, which of course, where are all the doctors and nurses? I was on a list to actually even get an appointment, to even not even set an appointment for 5 months to see a pulmonologist. Where are all the doctors? Did they get fired because they wouldn't get it? And now the only people who are still in those jobs are people who agree with it. And I'll tell you right now, go back to my job. I feel that there is a certain side of politics who are overrepresented in the education field, and the other side is underrepresented. And it makes things a lot easier if we're not in that group for the people who want to make decisions. The people who got fired were all conservatives. A lot of conservatives got the vaccinations. A lot of conservatives don't have a problem with getting vaccination, but almost everybody who has a problem with it are conservatives. So there's a big percentage of people who are conservatives who have no problem getting a vaccine. They don't have any issue with it. But the group of people who are most against it do happen to be conservatives. So this was I'm not going to say it was the reason, but I saw that my like-minded people, those are the ones who lost their jobs. And it was in every area of the government. It was in every area of state jobs and in education. That's weird. So, to talk about economic shutdown, how many people lost their jobs? They're not getting unemployment because they chose to lose their jobs. Um, so you have all of these issues now. They're in high demand, and there's like no mental health counseling available. There's just a lack of workforce. Inflation is on the rise. You have food that costs ridiculous amounts of money. I went to the grocery store yesterday, and because I'm allowed to be out now with a mask on, I follow the doctor's orders to a T. I'm not a rule breaker. I will question the rules, but I follow them. Um, and so I go to the grocery store, and they had like this thing of like pretzels with hot dogs in them, and it was a very small container, and it was $20. And I was like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me? Like, who can afford this? We're at Safeway. This is a grocery store. This is not, you know, some expensive place." Also, another reason for prepping is quarantines, which like we just came out of, or others more significant, contagious pathogens. So you also need to be prepared if you were to get seasonal flus, things like that. If you're sick, you should not be going to stores and exposing other people to them, to the virus that you have. Stay home. If you already have the things that you need in your home to take care of yourself, then you're ready to go. If there was a really bad contagious pathogen that was actually taking lives, then having what you need so you don't have to go outside and expose yourself to them, to those pathogens, that would be a great rationale to have. You don't want to live your life in fear. That 2 years where you were not allowed to go very many places, I'll tell you, it was such a blessing that I have a large yard and I gardened and we got chickens and we made the best of it. But, and I also have kids and a husband to talk to. There are people, I had students who like live in apartments. They're not allowed to go out and hang out with other people, living in basically a box, four walls, not going outside, not seeing friends. Their parents are at work. They're at home all day, so isolated. It's terrible. So thinking about those pathogens, you also might think about the types of preps, like how to entertain yourself. Like, do you have hobbies? Do you do arts and crafts? Do you have a lot of books that you can read? Like, do you have a home gym? Do you have ways of exercising and staying healthy and fit? Also, another rationale is supply and demand. Food and product shortages. Come on, people. You have to wake up and see the shelves. They will do this mirage of putting like two boxes close to each other to the front, and they are not full all the way to the back. A couple years ago, before COVID happened, we had the shelves were stocked all the way to the back. All the way to the back. And I remember checking because I would check for expiration dates. So I might pull the couple first from the front and grab the ones from the back and check the expiration date because they would usually put the expiration dates that were going to expire first in the front. And I remember checking the shelves frequently. They were full. And now there might be two or three things in the front, and a lot of sections are empty. The aisle space between the rows are wider. There are less aisles. And there will be times where there's like no meat. There'll be like no lunch meat, or there'll be like no, you know, certain things. The other day I went to the store and there were eggs that were like $7, $9, $12. Now, those some of those were organic or cage free, but still, it's 12 eggs. So the supply and demand, food and product shortages, um, those are reasons why people actually do this prepping stuff. And also for instinct. We are organisms. Every organism has instincts. Think of animals that, bury their food to save it for later. Like, we have an instinct to survive. And even if you're not really buying into any one issue, any one reason, you are aware that there's uncertainty. And so a lot of people will have the instinct of knowing I need to have a better, like, security system. I need to have smoke alarms and fire alarms and a fire extinguisher and, boards for my windows in case there's a windstorm. Like, you need to have extra this or that. There's an instinct. And if you don't naturally have that, then you need to encourage it. Go camping. I don't know, you guys, but you need to encourage it, because the last thing we want to be is these really disengaged people who can't go for a walk, and we fall over and hyperventilate and need EMTs because we exerted ourselves going up a flight of stairs. We need to make sure that we are healthy. And I'm talking to myself too. We need to make sure that we are healthier than we are now, which is something I'm going to really, really work on, because the last couple of years I've gone through so many traumas and stuff, losing people, that I've just let my health go to the wayside. So get healthy, prep for whatever reason you want to prep for. Make it diversify, though. Diversify it, because you might be prepping for job loss, but there might be a natural disaster. You might be prepping for a natural disaster, but there could be a quarantine. So you need to kind of diversify and think with an open mind. So I do want to see from you guys, why do you prep, or why do you think people should prep? I do want to see your comments below on why you think people should prep and why do you prep. I've shared some really personal things with you guys. I hope that I don't get a lot of negative stuff about what I shared about my experiences um, with the jab. Um, I really had some people who probably are pretty like-minded to me go crazy on me. I was like, you know what? I had to make a personal decision not to lose my job. At that juncture, I was like, you know what? I will literally lose my home in 3 months. My house is gone. Like, I will lose everything. And I have nowhere to go from there. I have like no lifeline. So, don't be so judgmental of other people, especially when we're backed into a corner and we don't have a lot of choices. Um, I am prepping, so I have choices. Can I go a year without getting paid? No, I can't. I can't go a year without getting paid. So I am starting to think about, like, I do have a degree in instructional design technology. Can I use that? Can I do something online that's not in the public, that's not a public school oriented? Could I work for a private corporation? Could I do something on my own? Could I sell my own curriculum? I don't know. So I'm starting to think outside the box, because the job loss, realizing that they had total control to make me do whatever they wanted to, was very unsettling. And that I never considered job loss as a rationale for prepping before. But that really revived my need to actually start prepping. And of course, all of the social unrest, all of the threats of terrorism, living on the um, West Coast, having threats from North Korea, like, there are some very real concerns. There are several different kind of prepping models, and I do want to say, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and also check out some of my other videos. I have a couple of videos already set up about prepping. SHTF Dollar Tree prepping haul for only $20. $5 preps that could save your life. Frugal preps. Um, Peaceful prepping at Dollar Tree. So go ahead and subscribe. Check out those other videos, and I will be doing more prepping videos in the future. I'm doing the video on the slideshow this time because it is cold outside. It snowed. It snowed last night, so it's super cold. So a beginner or curious person watches survival reality shows, has a maybe they have a bug out bag. I remember when I was my before I got married, I did have a bag like if I was in a scary situation and someone broke into my apartment, or you know, I I had some issues in high school where I was stalked. And so I had like a bug out bag just in case I had to go stay in a hotel. Did I have some cash? Did I have a credit card? You know, did I have some things? And so having a bug out bag was like natural to me before I even knew what a prepper was. So, a new filtration, a few filtration methods, an extra water on hand, some extra beans and rice, a few prep items, and possibly maybe they're possibly interested in camping, gardening, hiking, that kind of stuff. So, in the beginning, you might have a little bit of fear. Um, Maybe you're afraid of job loss. Maybe you're afraid of, personal situation like I had when I was younger. Um, Maybe you have, a fear of, I live by, there's several military installations, um, and you hear they're practicing, and you see the trucks and the tanks, and you see all kinds of stuff. And so you do kind of get that, curiosity of what's going on. So some people are kind of curious into what prepping is, and they're kind of getting their little beginner shoes on. So that's, those people are pretty mainstream still. Then you also have people who are homesteaders. This can be a really range. I would consider myself as like a homesteader minded. I don't live on a homestead. I live in a city. I have backyard chickens. I don't have a farm. I go to the grocery store. I have a job. I pay taxes. I buy fuel at a gas station. Like I am in the rat race still. My ultimate goal is to be a homesteader. My mind frame is a homesteader. Um, like I love gardening. I love putting up food. I love, having animals. So, but it can really go to like an extreme as well. Some people live off grid and really have substantial systems in place where they don't really need anybody else. I really like to live within communities. I like to be around other people. Um, I'm an introvert, but I also need that kind of connectedness. I love the idea of being able to be self sufficient, but I don't want to have to be self sufficient, if that makes sense. I want to be able to have relationships with people and also grow some zinnias. You also have people who are mainstreamers, and I'm going to also kind of combine that with gray men. So, like these people really fit in with normal society right now, but they're ready. They're ready for whatever's coming, but they blend in, and they don't set off the radar. Like you wouldn't even know that they are a prepper, but they do put food up. They don't talk about their pantry. They don't talk about the stuff. They have a go bag. They're physically fit, they're ready to hit the ground running should something happen. And they have some pretty good ideas of looking normal. And so, if anything, everybody should strive to be a Grayman because you do not want to draw attention to yourself. I don't have expensive preps. Most of my preps are just like DIY kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, I'm not independently wealthy, but there are people who have really expensive preps. And if they go around showboating them and bragging about them, they might find themselves not having those preps anymore. So it's good to be discreet. I think it's important to share with the ones you love, like to encourage them to put some water away, to put some food away, to make sure they have a rain barrel catchment system, to try to encourage them to learn how to garden and that kind of stuff. Make sure that they tell your friends and family to, have rice and beans and, canned foods and, dehydrated foods, but um, not have everybody trying to knock down your door should something happen because you're the person who has everything. Okay. So I'm just kind of putting that out there that if you are flaunting it, you might want to scale that part of it back. Not saying to stop prepping, but maybe stop advertising it so much. I don't feel like I have anything to lose because I don't have anything really more than the average person. Um, uh, the stuff the biggest prep I have are my skills and my knowledge, and so no one can take that away from me. Um, all I can do is share. So I don't feel like by sharing my ideas about prepping that puts me at risk, just because I don't have the expensive items that a lot of people are trying to show off. So, um, not saying you shouldn't get those items. I just don't have them yet. So another prepping model, this is what I put this on myself, grandma and grandpa, because sometimes there are people who don't see themselves as preppers. They don't see themselves as homesteaders or survivalists or anything like that, but they've gone through something. So I put down like grandmas, because a lot of older people have survived really hard economic times like the Great Depression. They know how to stretch their flour. They know how to stretch a recipe. They know how to preserve something. They might not have done it for a while, but they might remember how to do some things that they learned when they were younger, when things were harder. Um, and I think they go unnoticed, but they have a lot of skills. Like they're able to mend clothing, darn socks. They probably remembered how to do certain things. Um, in a way that's frugal, in a way that's creative and saves money. I also put down grandpas because a lot of um, older fellows have military experience. I know a lot of people who have either military experience or have experience like hunting and fishing and that kind of lifestyle, and they're older and maybe they're going golfing now, but they still remember how to deal with a combatant, how to deal with, a stressful situation with um, night duty, like how to stay up and take shifts and share, responsibilities, how to, you know, um, do so many things like rationing and so forth. And they can build a tent or a structure or things like that. So a lot of people, they're not gray men by like choice, or they're not preppers by the like by how they define themselves, but they have these skills that are a way of prepping. And a lot of grandmothers who have gone through the Great Depression, they were, go back to Psychology 101, they were traumatized by not having enough food. They were traumatized by starving when times were lean. And so they tend to buy a lot of shelf stable foods. And if you go to grandma's house, I bet you never go home hungry. So I would say grandma and grandpas are preppers. And they might even have a camp for her or something like that. Another model would be the extremist. Now, extremists, and I'm not saying these items right here in the picture, all preppers should have a whistle and a flint and many ways of starting fires. I didn't want to put any pictures on there that would actually make people afraid. But extremists actually do make people afraid. They scare people away from prepping, and which makes it even more dangerous, because the more people who prep, the safer it is. The less people who prep, the more dangerous it is. So extremists tend to give a negative rap for prepping. It scares people and often turns people off. These people kind of over advertise that they have boom boom sticks and talk about how they're going to use them to take other people's preps. And I personally am terrified of personalities like that, and I will distance myself so fast. I will also have the red flag up. I will not keep my eyes off of a person like that. If you are around people who convey being sociopaths or psychopaths, anybody can be a prepper. Anybody can be anything. Anybody, good or bad, evil, kind, can be a prepper. And I have heard some people who were not even just extremist, like psychotic extremist, that are terrifying and they are scary. Stay away from them. Don't bring them into your inner circle. Try to be unnoticed by them. Avoid them at all cost. And don't let them turn you off of prepping, because your survival counts on it is dependent on you being ready for whatever happens. Okay? So don't let them turn you off. Survivalists are awesome. These people can go out and make their own fire with just their hands and a stick, and they can figure out, how to filter water with moss, and they can catch, a rabbit and, fillet a fish and do all these kinds of really cool things. I love watching actual survivalist shows where people really have the skills. I think it's really interesting. They can build primitive shelters, they can purify water. I think they're really interesting. That's not my style because I'm a softie. Like, I like to be comfortable. And if I have to, I want to think that I could. But my model isn't survivalist. My model is homesteader, or like gray man homesteader. So survivalist is really cool, and that is something that I would aspire to, that I am impressed by, and I think it's really entertaining to learn about it, honestly. Some tips I have for beginners is don't be a naysayer. Don't That's the first step. If you are saying to people like prepping is for people who are paranoid, then you are not going to prep. So, step one is just don't be a naysayer. Don't put it down. Kind of have an open mind about it. Second, learn about your area. You go for a walk in your area. Find out where there are edible foods. I remember like walking home from someplace and I saw berry bushes. And I was like, you know what? That would be really good to know. Do you know where there's nut trees or fruit trees or berry bushes or, salal, like blackberries, salal, all different kinds of things. Do you know where those things are? If I remember thinking too, if there was an active shooter, do you know where there's somewhere to hide? If you know your neighborhood, do you know where you could hide from some crazy person running around town? Get into shape. I am in really bad shape right now. I've let some of my physical issues keep me from doing my normal routine, and it made it even worse. So now I'm having to go through the work of getting back into shape. And that maybe should be number one. Get into shape. You will die if you're not in shape. Even if nothing happens, you will die if you're not in shape. You will die from high blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, stroke, whatever. Your health will kill you if you're not in shape. So, whether or not there is actually any kind of emergency, if something really does happen, then you need to be able to exert physical labor. Gardening for fun, you can pace yourself. But if you're gardening because your life depends on it, you're going to have to be very active for many hours a day, lots of carrying stuff, lots of bending and lifting. You need to be in good physical shape. Next, stock up. Stock up on water, medications, over the counter medications, tools, a little bit here, a little bit there, whatever you can do. Don't stock up on food that you don't like, and make sure that you do have a rotation system. I might have mentioned in a video before, I totally messed up many years ago. I prepped like a crazy person. I didn't know how to prep. I just got lots of bags of rice and beans and like canned foods and medicines and shampoos and soaps and all kinds of stuff. And I did not really pay attention to the dates. And I put them in like these totes and containers, and I stacked them all up. And they were so hard to get to that years passed and nothing important happened. And then when I opened up the containers, they had been expired for like 10 years. So, and they were dangerous. Like they were in a hot room. I couldn't have kept them. I had to get rid of them. And it was such a waste. And it was actually shameful. I feel guilty for that. So make sure that you also stock up on food that you actually will eat, that your kids or your loved ones will eat, that you like to have, and have a rotation system. Don't just stock up on foods that are full of sodium and unhealthy. Make sure that you have a really good balanced, pantry that you are rotating. And that's something I really need to work on because I have very limited space. So if I try to tuck food away, it's often really hard to get to it because I live in a very small home with no storage. So, but don't make excuses. Make sure that you always have something at least that you can get through a couple of months. Okay, make prepping a routine, even on a budget. Not all preps cost money. If every time you go to the grocery store, you always get an extra pound of rice, or you always get one extra thing, like an extra thing of sugar, or an extra thing of coffee, or an extra thing of whatever it is. If you always get at least one, maybe set a money amount about that for it, but then consistently every week do this and work on your skills. Even if you have no money, budget, space, whatever, skills are something that people can't take away from you unless you get something like Alzheimer's. Unless you get dementia or Alzheimer's, your skills are yours and you will keep them forever and you can share them with other people. And when you share it, you don't lose anything from it. So work on your skills. Learn how to go fishing. Learn how to, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, hunting and that kind of stuff. If you can stomach it, learn how to fix and repair your home, how to fix your car, how to do an oil change, how to change your tire, how to darn a sock, how to sew something, hem something, wash your clothes and hang them up on a line. Learn something new, skills that actually matter, and how to cook with few ingredients on an open flame. That's important. How to can, how to make jellies or preserves, how to dehydrate something. And start small because a lot of people start really big. They're getting all their Mylar bags and they're getting all this expensive gadgets and all this stuff, and they haven't done the basics yet. So start small and do it in a sustainable way that you can keep doing it for a long period of time. Right? And do it in a way that doesn't make you lose hope. I have to give a shout out for all of the people who attributed to this video by providing information and images. Thank you to the many preppers, authors, bloggers, and photography artists for sharing your knowledge and skills with the world. I will post those links in the bottom later as well. So please subscribe to Crybaby Cinema Homestead. I would like you to comment below what style of prepping do you feel is the most sustainable, valuable, or effective? And what is your best piece of a prepping tip, your best piece of advice, or your number one prepping skill or item? Don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe, and make sure you comment below. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.